Officer Mike Rodriguez sat in his patrol car on Oak Street, sipping his morning coffee and watching the traffic flow through Riverside City. It was another hot Tuesday in July, and the sun was already beating down hard at 9:30 a.m. Mike had been a police officer for 12 long years, and he thought he knew everything about his job. He believed he could spot trouble from a mile away. Mike was not like other officers. He had strong opinions about who belonged where in the city. In his mind, certain people should stay in certain neighborhoods. The rich area called Hillcrest was for wealthy white families, not for others. This was his personal rule, even though it was completely wrong. As Mike sat watching the road, a shiny black Mercedes-Benz slowly drove past him. The car was expensive and looked brand new. Behind the wheel, he could see a young black woman wearing dark sunglasses and what looked like a business suit. She was driving carefully and following all traffic rules, but something about this scene made Mike angry. What is she doing here? Mike thought to himself. In his twisted mind, a black woman should not be driving an expensive car through the richest part of town. He decided she must be up to something bad. Maybe the car was stolen. Maybe she was selling drugs. Maybe she was looking for houses to rob. None of these thoughts were based on facts, but Mike's prejudiced mind was already made up. The woman in the Mercedes was Dr. Angela Thompson, though Mike had no idea who she was. Dr. Thompson was a highly respected police officer who had worked in Chicago for 20 years. She had started as a regular patrol officer and worked her way up to become a police captain. She was smart, honest, and dedicated to serving her community. Dr. Thompson was driving to the most important meeting of her career. She was going to the Riverside City Hall for her final interview to become the new police chief. She had been through months of interviews and background checks. The job was basically hers, but this last meeting would make it official. She was excited and nervous at the same time. She had moved to Riverside City 3 months ago and bought a beautiful house in Hillcrest with her savings. She worked hard for 20 years to afford such a nice home. She deserved to live wherever she wanted, just like any other American citizen. As Dr. Thompson drove down Maple Street, she was thinking about her plans for the police department. She wanted to make positive changes and help officers build better relationships with the community. She believed in fair and honest policing for everyone. Suddenly, she saw flashing lights in her rearview mirror. A police car was behind her with its sirens on. Dr. Thompson felt confused because she knew she was not speeding or breaking any traffic laws. She had been driving very carefully because she did not want to be late for her meeting. She pulled over to the side of the road and turned off her engine. As an experienced police officer herself, she knew exactly what to do. She kept her hands on the steering wheel where the officer could see them. She was calm and professional, even though she felt worried about being late for her interview. Officer Rodriguez got out of his patrol car and walked toward the Mercedes. He was already angry and suspicious, even though Dr. Thompson had done nothing wrong. He walked with an aggressive stance like he was approaching a dangerous criminal. His hand was resting on his gun, ready to draw it if needed. When Mike reached the driver's window, Dr. Thompson rolled it down and smiled politely. "Good morning, officer. Is there a problem?" she asked in a calm, respectful voice. Mike looked at her with cold, unfriendly eyes. "License and registration," he demanded rudely, without explaining why he had stopped her. Dr. Thompson reached for her purse slowly and carefully. She had dealt with racist police officers before during her career, and she knew how to handle the situation. She handed over her driver's license and car registration with steady hands. Mike looked at the documents and saw that Dr. Thompson lived on Elm Street, right in the heart of Hillcrest. This made him even more suspicious and angry. In his prejudiced mind, she definitely did not belong in that neighborhood. "What are you doing in this area?" Mike asked in a harsh tone. "I'm driving to a business meeting, officer," Dr. Thompson replied calmly. She did not want to tell him about her job interview because it was private information. "What kind of business?" Mike pressed, stepping closer to the car window. "A professional meeting," Dr. Thompson answered, still being polite and respectful. Mike was not satisfied with her answers. He was convinced that she was lying and hiding something criminal. "Where did you get this car?" he asked accusingly. Dr. Thompson felt a flash of anger but kept her voice calm. "I bought it with my own money, officer. Is there a specific traffic violation you're citing me for?" Her question made Mike even more angry. He did not like being questioned, especially by someone he saw as a criminal. "Don't get smart with me," he snapped. "Step out of the vehicle." Dr. Thompson knew she did not have to get out of the car for a simple traffic stop, but she also knew that arguing with a hostile officer could make things worse. She slowly got out of her Mercedes and stood beside it. Mike began looking inside her car through the windows. "I smell marijuana," he lied. "I need to search your vehicle." Dr. Thompson knew this was completely false. She had never used drugs in her life, and her car was spotlessly clean. "Officer, I do not consent to a search. There are no drugs in my vehicle, and you have no probable cause to search it." Her knowledge of police procedures made Mike even more suspicious. In his twisted thinking, only criminals knew about their legal rights. "Why are you being so uncooperative?" he demanded. "I'm not being uncooperative, officer. I'm simply exercising my constitutional rights," Dr. Thompson replied firmly but respectfully. Mike was furious now. He called for backup on his radio, making it sound like he had stopped a dangerous suspect. "I need another unit at Maple and 3rd Street. I have an uncooperative subject here." Within minutes, 2 more police cars arrived at the scene. The other officers, Johnson and Martinez, were surprised to see such a well-dressed, calm woman being treated like a criminal. But they trusted Rodriguez and did not question his judgment. By now, several neighbors had come out of their houses to watch what was happening. Mrs. Henderson, an elderly white woman who lived across the street, was shocked to see her new neighbor being harassed by police. She knew Dr. Thompson as a quiet, friendly woman who always waved hello. Mrs. Henderson quietly took out her phone and started recording the incident. She had a feeling that something was very wrong with this situation. Mike spent the next 30 minutes looking for any reason to justify his actions. He checked Dr. Thompson's car registration multiple times. He called in her license number to see if she had any warrants, which she did not. He examined every inch of her car for violations. Finally, Mike decided to write her several tickets for minor issues. He cited her for having tinted windows that were supposedly too dark, even though they met legal standards. He gave her a ticket for an air freshener hanging from her rearview mirror, claiming it was obstructing her view. He even wrote her up for having a license plate frame from the car dealership. Dr. Thompson accepted each ticket calmly, knowing she would fight them in court. She had been humiliated and delayed, but she kept her dignity throughout the entire ordeal. As Mike handed her the last ticket, he had a satisfied smirk on his face. In his mind, he had put this uppity black woman in her place. He thought he had shown her that she did not belong in his city. "Drive carefully," Mike said sarcastically. As he walked back to his patrol car, Dr. Thompson got back in her Mercedes and drove away slowly. She was now 45 minutes late for her meeting, but she called ahead to explain that she had been delayed by a traffic stop. The city officials were understanding and rescheduled her appointment for later that afternoon. As she drove to City Hall, Dr. Thompson thought about the incident. She had experienced racism before, but this was particularly hurtful because she was about to become the leader of this police department. She wondered how many other innocent people had been treated this way by Officer Rodriguez. She did not know it yet, but Mrs. Henderson's video would soon change everything. And in just 3 weeks, she would face Officer Rodriguez again in a courtroom, where the truth would finally come out. 3 weeks had passed since that hot Tuesday morning when Officer Rodriguez pulled over Dr. Thompson. During those 3 weeks, many things had changed in Riverside City, but Officer Rodriguez had no idea what was coming his way. Dr. Thompson had completed her interview process and been officially selected as the new police chief. However, the announcement would not be made public until the following Monday. Only the mayor, city council members, and a few top officials knew about her appointment. She wanted to keep it secret until she could properly introduce herself to the police department. During these 3 weeks, Dr. Thompson had been busy preparing for her new job. She studied crime reports, met with community leaders, and made plans to improve the police department. But she had not forgotten about Officer Rodriguez and his unfair treatment of her. She was determined to fight the bogus tickets in court, not just for herself, but for all the other innocent people who might have been treated the same way. The morning of the court hearing was cool and cloudy. Dr. Thompson dressed in a simple black business suit and arrived at the Riverside Municipal Court early. She wanted to observe how the court operated before her case was called. She sat quietly in the back row, watching other cases and taking mental notes. The courtroom was old but well-maintained, with wooden benches and high ceilings. Judge Patricia Williams presided over the morning session. Judge Williams was a respected African-American woman in her 50s who had been on the bench for 15 years. She was known for being fair but tough, and she did not tolerate nonsense from anyone. Dr. Thompson's lawyer was Sarah Mitchell, a sharp young attorney who specialized in civil rights cases. Sarah had reviewed the tickets and immediately recognized them as examples of racial profiling. She had prepared thoroughly for this case, knowing it was about much more than just traffic violations. As Dr. Thompson sat in the back of the courtroom, she noticed Officer Rodriguez enter through a side door. He was wearing his dress uniform and looked confident, almost cocky. He nodded to a few other officers who were there for different cases and took a seat near the front. Rodriguez was feeling very sure of himself. In his 12 years as a police officer, he had testified in court dozens of times. He had never lost a case involving traffic tickets. In his mind, it was always his word against the driver's word, and judges usually believed police officers. He expected this case to be quick and easy. Case number 2024-7789, City of Riverside versus Angela Thompson, announced the court clerk. Dr. Thompson stood up and walked to the defendant's table with her lawyer. Rodriguez glanced back and saw her for the first time since the traffic stop. She looked professional and confident, but he still saw her as just another troublemaker who needed to be put in her place. "Your Honor," began the prosecutor, a tired-looking man named Mr. Davis. "The defendant is charged with multiple traffic violations including illegal window tinting, obstructed view, and improper license plate display." Judge Williams looked at the charges and frowned slightly. These were very minor violations, and it seemed odd that someone would contest them in court, unless they felt they were treated unfairly. "Officer Rodriguez, please take the stand," said Mr. Davis. Rodriguez walked confidently to the witness stand and was sworn in. He sat up straight and looked directly at the judge, just as he had been taught in police academy. "Officer Rodriguez," began Mr. Davis, "please tell the court about your encounter with the defendant on July 15th. Rodriguez cleared his throat and began his testimony. But instead of sticking to the facts, he started adding details that were completely false. His prejudice and arrogance took over, and he began painting Dr. Thompson as a dangerous criminal. "Your Honor, I was on patrol in the Hillcrest area when I observed the defendant driving erratically." Rodriguez lied smoothly. "She was speeding and weaving between lanes, which caught my attention immediately." Dr. Thompson and her lawyer Sarah exchanged glances. They both knew this was completely untrue, but they let Rodriguez continue digging his own grave. "When I approached the vehicle," Rodriguez continued, "the defendant appeared extremely nervous and agitated. She was sweating profusely and could barely hold her hands steady. Based on my 12 years of experience, these are classic signs of drug use or criminal activity." Judge Williams raised an eyebrow. She had heard many police officers testify over the years, and something about Rodriguez's story did not ring true. "The defendant was also very uncooperative," Rodriguez went on, getting more carried away with his lies. "She refused to answer simple questions about what she was doing in the area. When I asked her where she got such an expensive car, she became hostile and started arguing with me." Sarah Mitchell was taking careful notes, writing down every lie that Rodriguez told. She had the video evidence that would destroy his credibility, but she wanted to let him finish his false testimony first. "I could smell the strong odor of marijuana coming from inside the vehicle," Rodriguez continued with his fabrication. "When I asked to search the car, the defendant became even more aggressive and started yelling at me. She was clearly hiding something illegal." Dr. Thompson remained calm, but inside she was amazed by how many lies Rodriguez was telling under oath. Perjury was a serious crime, and he was digging himself deeper with every word. Based on all these suspicious factors, Rodriguez concluded, I had no choice but to cite the defendant for the violations I observed. In my professional opinion, she was likely involved in drug trafficking and was using the expensive car to transport illegal substances through our community. The courtroom was quiet as Rodriguez finished his testimony. He looked satisfied with his performance, convinced that he had painted Dr. Thompson as a dangerous criminal who deserved to be punished. Thank you, Officer Rodriguez, said Mr. Davis. Your witness, Ms. Mitchell. Sarah Mitchell stood up slowly, holding a tablet in her hand. She walked toward the witness stand with a slight smile on her face. Rodriguez suddenly felt less confident as he saw the determined look in her eyes. Officer Rodriguez, Sarah began calmly, you testified that my client was driving erratically and speeding. Do you recall the exact speed she was traveling? Rodriguez hesitated. He had not mentioned any specific speed in his report because Dr. Thompson had not been speeding at all. She was going about 10 miles over the speed limit, he said, making up another lie on the spot. But you didn't cite her for speeding, did you? Sarah asked, looking at the tickets. Rodriguez realized his mistake. Well, I decided to give her a warning for that. How generous of you, Sarah said sarcastically. Now, you also testified that my client was weaving between lanes. Can you describe exactly which lanes she was weaving between on Maple Street? Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. Maple Street was a narrow residential road with only one lane in each direction. There were no lanes to weave between. She was driving over the center line, he said weakly. But you didn't cite her for that, either, did you? Sarah pressed. No, I focused on the more serious violations, Rodriguez stammered. Sarah walked back to her table and picked up her tablet. Officer Rodriguez, I'm going to show you a video of the traffic stop. This was recorded by a witness who happened to be watching from across the street. Rodriguez's face went pale. He had not noticed Mrs. Henderson recording the incident, and he had no idea that video evidence existed. Sarah connected her tablet to the courtroom's display system. Your Honor, I would like to present Defense Exhibit A, a video recording of the entire traffic stop. Judge Williams nodded. Please proceed. The video began playing on the large screen at the front of the courtroom. Everyone could clearly see Dr. Thompson's Mercedes driving slowly and carefully down Maple Street. There was no erratic driving, no speeding, and no weaving between lanes. The car was moving in a perfectly straight line at a reasonable speed. The video then showed Rodriguez pulling her over and approaching the car aggressively. Dr. Thompson could be seen rolling down her window and speaking politely to the officer. She handed over her documents without any resistance or argument. As the video continued, everyone in the courtroom could see that Rodriguez was the one being aggressive and hostile. Dr. Thompson remained calm and respectful throughout the entire encounter. There was no yelling, no arguing, and no signs of nervousness or drug use. The video clearly showed Rodriguez searching around the car, looking for reasons to write tickets. It showed him calling for backup even though Dr. Thompson was cooperating, fully. Most damaging of all, it showed his smug, satisfied expression as he handed her the citations. The courtroom was dead silent as the video ended. Judge Williams looked stern and angry. Rodriguez was sweating now, realizing that his lies had been completely exposed. Officer Rodriguez, Sarah said quietly, do you still maintain that my client was driving erratically and acting suspiciously? Rodriguez's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He could not think of anything to say that would not make his situation worse. The video doesn't show everything, he said weakly. What doesn't it show? Sarah asked firmly. Rodriguez had no answer. He sat there looking defeated and embarrassed, knowing that everyone in the courtroom now knew he was a liar. Judge Williams leaned forward in her chair. Officer Rodriguez, I have been watching police officers testify in my courtroom. The courtroom was still buzzing with whispers after the video had finished playing. Officer Rodriguez sat slumped in the witness stand, his face red with embarrassment and anger. He knew his lies had been completely exposed, but he was not ready to admit defeat. His pride would not let him back down, even when the evidence was stacked against him. Judge Williams looked at Rodriguez with disgust and disappointment. In her 15 years on the bench, she had seen many police officers testify, and most of them were honest and professional. But Rodriguez represented everything wrong with law enforcement: the arrogance, the prejudice, and the willingness to lie under oath. "Officer Rodriguez," Judge Williams said sternly, "do you have anything else to say about your testimony?" Rodriguez straightened up in his chair, trying to regain some of his lost confidence. "Your Honor, that video only shows part of what happened. It doesn't show the suspicious behavior I observed before I turned on my lights. It doesn't capture the smell of marijuana or the defendant's hostile attitude." Sarah Mitchell stood up quickly. "Your Honor, the witness is continuing to perjure himself. The video clearly shows my client being respectful and cooperative throughout the entire encounter." "I agree," Judge Williams said firmly. "Officer Rodriguez, you may step down. Ms. Mitchell, please call your next witness." Rodriguez walked back to his seat, his legs feeling weak and shaky. He had never been so humiliated in a courtroom before, but he had no idea that the worst was yet to come. "Your Honor," Sarah Mitchell announced, "I call Dr. Angela Thompson to the stand." Dr. Thompson stood up from the defendant's table and walked calmly toward the witness stand. As she moved through the courtroom, Rodriguez got his first clear look at her face without sunglasses. She was younger than he had thought, probably in her early 40s, with kind eyes and a confident bearing. Something about her seemed familiar, but Rodriguez could not quite place where he might have seen her before. She carried herself like someone who was used to being in positions of authority and respect. Dr. Thompson raised her right hand and was sworn in by the court clerk. "Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?" "I do," Dr. Thompson replied in a clear, strong voice. She sat down in the witness chair and looked directly at Sarah Mitchell, ready to tell her side of the story. The courtroom was completely quiet now, with everyone eager to hear what she had to say. "Please state your name for the record," Sarah began. "My name is Dr. Angela Marie Thompson. Dr. Thompson, can you tell the court about your activities on the morning of July 15th? Dr. Thompson spoke in a calm, professional tone that commanded respect. "I was driving to an important business meeting at City Hall. I had left my home on Elm Street at approximately 9:15 a.m. and was taking my usual route through the city." "How would you describe your driving that morning?" Sarah asked. "I was driving very carefully and following all traffic laws. I was actually driving slightly below the speed limit because I wanted to arrive safely and on time for my meeting. The meeting was extremely important to my career." Rodriguez listened to her testimony and felt frustrated. She sounded educated and intelligent, not like the criminal he had painted her to be. But he still believed he had been right to stop her. In his prejudiced mind, she still did not belong in that neighborhood, regardless of how she spoke or acted. "Dr. Thompson, can you describe Officer Rodriguez's behavior during the traffic stop?" Sarah continued. "Officer Rodriguez approached my vehicle in an aggressive manner with his hand on his weapon. He immediately demanded to know what I was doing in the area and questioned whether my car was stolen. He made false accusations about smelling drugs and insisted on searching my vehicle without probable cause." Dr. Thompson's testimony was calm and factual, but everyone in the courtroom could hear the pain in her voice. It was clear that the incident had hurt her deeply, not just because of the delay it caused, but because of the way she had been treated as a human being. "Were you cooperative during this encounter?" Sarah asked. "I was completely cooperative throughout the entire stop. I provided my license and registration immediately. I answered his questions politely and respectfully. I only refused the vehicle search because I knew my constitutional rights and there was no legal basis for such a search." Judge Williams nodded approvingly. It was clear that Dr. Thompson knew her rights and had handled the situation properly, despite being treated unfairly. "Dr. Thompson," Sarah said, "can you tell the court about your educational background?" This was the moment Sarah had been building toward. She knew that Dr. Thompson's credentials would shock everyone in the courtroom, especially Officer Rodriguez. "Have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Northwestern University and a master's degree in public administration from the University of Chicago. I also completed the FBI National Academy program and have received numerous certifications in law enforcement management and community policing." Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had not expected the defendant to be so highly educated, but he still did not understand the full impact of what was about to be revealed. "And what is your profession, Dr. Thompson?" Sarah asked, preparing to drop the bombshell that would change everything. "I am a police officer," Dr. Thompson replied simply. The courtroom erupted in surprised murmurs and whispers. Rodriguez felt like he had been punched in the stomach. A police officer? The woman he had treated like a criminal was actually a fellow law enforcement professional? But Sarah Mitchell was not finished. She had saved the biggest revelation for last. "Dr. Thompson, can you be more specific about your law enforcement experience?" "I spent 20 years with the Chicago Police Department, starting as a patrol officer and working my way up through the ranks. I served as a detective for 5 years, then as a sergeant for 4 years, and finally as a captain for the last 8 years of my career." The whispers in the courtroom grew louder. Here was a highly decorated police officer with 2 decades of experience, and Rodriguez had treated her like a street criminal. "What were your responsibilities as a police captain?" Sarah asked. "I supervised over 200 officers and managed several specialized units including internal affairs, community policing, and police training. I was responsible for investigating misconduct cases and implementing department reforms." Rodriguez was beginning to feel sick to his stomach. This woman was not just a police officer. She was a high-ranking supervisor who specialized in investigating. Exactly the kind of behavior he had displayed during the traffic stop. But the biggest shock was still coming. "Dr. Thompson," Sarah said slowly, building the suspense, "what is your current employment status?" Dr. Thompson looked directly at Rodriguez for the first time since taking the stand. Their eyes met across the courtroom, and she could see the growing fear and realization in his face. "3 weeks ago, I was officially selected to serve as the new chief of police for Riverside City. I am scheduled to begin my duties this coming Monday morning." The courtroom exploded in shocked gasps and exclamations. People turned to look at each other in disbelief. Judge Williams had to bang her gavel several times to restore order. Rodriguez felt like the world was spinning around him. The woman he had humiliated and accused of being a drug dealer was about to become his boss. The person he had treated with such disrespect and prejudice would soon be in charge of the entire police department, including his own career and future. His face turned completely white and he felt like he might faint. All the confidence and arrogance he had displayed earlier was gone, replaced by pure terror and regret. Dr. Thompson continued looking at him calmly. "Officer Rodriguez," she said quietly, "I believe we've met before." The irony of the situation was overwhelming. Rodriguez had spent years believing that he could judge people by their appearance and decide who belonged where in society. He had used his badge and authority to harass and intimidate people he considered beneath him, but now he was facing the consequences of his actions in the most dramatic way possible. The woman he had tried to put in her place was actually far above him in rank, education, and professional accomplishment. She was about to become his ultimate superior, with the power to determine his future in law enforcement. Judge Williams looked back and forth between Dr. Thompson and Rodriguez, understanding the full significance of what had just been revealed. This was not just a case about traffic tickets anymore. This was about justice, accountability, and the abuse of police power. "Dr. Thompson," Judge Williams said, "I believe we have heard enough testimony for today. This court will take a brief recess to consider the implications of what has been presented." As the judge left the courtroom, Rodriguez sat frozen in his chair, knowing that his career and reputation were about to be destroyed by his own prejudice and lies. The woman he had tried to humiliate had just revealed herself to be everything he was not: educated, professional, accomplished, and honest. The truth was finally out, and there would be no hiding from the consequences. The 15-minute recess felt like hours to Officer Rodriguez. He sat alone in the courtroom hallway, his head in his hands, trying to process what had just happened. The woman he had treated like a criminal was about to become his boss. The person he had lied about under oath was a decorated police captain with 20 years of experience. His career was over, and he knew it. Other officers who had been in the courtroom for different cases walked past him, whispering among themselves. Word was already spreading throughout the courthouse about what had happened. Some officers shook, their heads in disappointment, while others looked at Rodriguez with disgust. Detective Maria Santos, who had worked with Rodriguez for 5 years, stopped beside him. "Mike, what were you thinking?" she asked quietly. "How could you treat another police officer like that?" Rodriguez looked up at her with desperate eyes. "I didn't know who she was, Maria. She was in the wrong neighborhood. You know how it is in Hillcrest. We don't usually see people like her there." Maria stepped back, shocked by his words. "People like her? Mike, do you hear yourself? You racially profiled a police captain because of the color of her skin. There's no excuse for that." She walked away, leaving Rodriguez alone with his thoughts and regrets. He realized that even his fellow officers were turning against him. The thin blue line that usually protected police officers from consequences was crumbling around him. Inside the courtroom, Dr. Thompson sat calmly with her lawyer, Sarah Mitchell. Several people approached her to introduce themselves and apologize for what had happened. Mrs. Henderson, the elderly woman who had recorded the video, came up to shake her hand. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that, dear," Mrs. Henderson said warmly. "I've lived in this neighborhood for 30 years, and I've never seen such disgraceful behavior from a police officer. I'm glad I recorded it." Dr. Thompson smiled and thanked her. "Your video made all the difference, Mrs. Henderson. Without it, this would have been my word against his, and we both know how that usually ends." Judge Williams returned to the courtroom, and everyone quickly took their seats. The judge looked serious and angry as she reviewed her notes from the testimony. She had made up her mind about what needed to happen next. "This court is now back in session," announced the bailiff. Judge Williams looked directly at the prosecution table where Mr. Davis, the prosecutor, sat looking uncomfortable. "Mr. Davis, in light of the evidence presented today, does the state wish to continue pursuing these charges against Dr. Thompson?" Mr. Davis stood up slowly. He was clearly embarrassed by Rodriguez's behavior and testimony. "Your Honor, the state moves to dismiss all charges against Dr. Thompson. It is clear that these citations were issued without proper cause." "Motion granted," Judge Williams said firmly. "All charges against Dr. Thompson are hereby dismissed with prejudice." The small crowd in the courtroom applauded, but Judge Williams was not finished. She had more to say about what had happened. "Dr. Thompson, please approach the bench," the judge said. Dr. Thompson walked forward and stood before Judge Williams, who looked down at her with respect and sympathy. "Dr. Thompson, I want to personally apologize on behalf of the Riverside City justice system for the treatment you received. What happened to you was a clear violation of your civil rights and an abuse of police power. No citizen, regardless of their race or background, should ever be treated the way Officer Rodriguez treated you." "Thank you, Your Honor," Dr. Thompson replied gracefully. Judge Williams then turned her attention to Rodriguez, who was still sitting in the gallery looking sick and defeated. "Officer Rodriguez, please stand," the judge commanded. Rodriguez slowly got to his feet, his legs shaking with fear and nervousness. "In my 15 years on this bench, I have rarely seen such a blatant example of perjury and misconduct by a police officer. You lied under oath multiple times, and your lies were contradicted by clear video evidence. You racially profiled Dr. Thompson based solely on her appearance and then tried to justify your actions with false testimony." Rodriguez opened his mouth to speak, but Judge Williams held up her hand to stop him. "I am ordering the court reporter to prepare a full transcript of your testimony today. This transcript will be forwarded to the district attorney's office for investigation of possible perjury charges. I am also forwarding a copy to the Riverside Police Department's Internal Affairs Division." Rodriguez felt his knees go weak. Perjury was a felony that could result in prison time and the permanent loss of his police certification. "Furthermore," Judge Williams continued, "your conduct represents everything that is wrong with modern policing. You used your badge and authority to harass an innocent citizen based on racial prejudice. This behavior is unacceptable and will not be tolerated in my courtroom or in this community." The judge's words echoed throughout the courtroom, and Rodriguez could feel everyone's eyes on him. He had never felt so small and ashamed in his entire life. "Court is adjourned," Judge Williams announced, banging her gavel with finality. As people began filing out of the courtroom, Rodriguez tried to slip away quietly. But several reporters had heard about the case and were waiting outside the courthouse. The story was already spreading on social media, thanks to Mrs. Henderson sharing her video online. Channel 7. News reporter Jennifer Walsh approached Dr. Thompson as she left the courthouse. "Dr. Thompson, can you comment on what happened in court today?" Dr. Thompson stopped and faced the camera with dignity and composure. She knew this was an opportunity to address the larger issues of police reform and racial justice. "What happened to me 3 weeks ago happens to countless innocent people every day across this country," she said calmly. "The only difference is that most victims don't have video evidence and most don't have the resources to fight back in court. I was fortunate to have both." "How does it feel to know that Officer Rodriguez will soon be working under your command?" the reporter asked. Dr. Thompson's expression became more serious. "If Officer Rodriguez continues to work for the Riverside Police Department, he will need to undergo significant retraining and demonstrate that he can change his attitudes and behavior. The kind of conduct he displayed today has no place in modern law enforcement." Meanwhile, Rodriguez had managed to sneak out a back entrance of the courthouse, but he could not escape what was waiting for him. His phone was buzzing constantly with calls from reporters, fellow officers, and his supervisors. The story was already being shared thousands of times on social media, with hashtags like police accountability and justice served. Within hours, the video of the traffic stop had been viewed over 100,000 times. People were outraged by Rodriguez's behavior and inspired by Dr. Thompson's grace under pressure. Comments poured in from police officers across the country, both supporting Dr. Thompson and condemning Rodriguez's actions. Police Chief Margaret Foster, who was retiring at the end of the week, called an emergency meeting with Mayor Robert Chen and the City Council. She knew the department was facing a public relations crisis that could damage its reputation for years to come. "We need to act quickly," Chief Foster told the mayor. "Rodriguez's behavior is indefensible, and we cannot allow it to reflect on the entire department. I recommend immediate suspension pending a full internal investigation." Mayor Chen agreed. Completely. He was already fielding angry calls from community leaders and civil rights organizations. The last thing the city needed was a scandal involving their new police chief before she even started the job. "I want Rodriguez suspended immediately," the mayor said firmly. "And I want Dr. Thompson to start her duties as chief earlier than planned. The community needs to see that we take this seriously and that we support her leadership." Chief Foster nodded. "I'll make the calls right now. Rodriguez will be off duty by the end of the day." As the sun set on that eventful day, Rodriguez sat in his apartment staring at his phone as the notifications kept pouring in. His wife had already heard about the incident from neighbors, and she was asking him difficult questions he could not answer. "How could you do this, Mike?" she asked with tears in her eyes. "How could you treat someone like that just because of their skin color?" Rodriguez had no good answers. For the first time in his life, he was forced to confront his own prejudices and the damage they had caused. But it might be too late for him to change. Across town, Dr. Thompson was receiving a very different kind of phone call. Mayor Chen was personally inviting her to start her new job 3 days early, so she could begin addressing the crisis Rodriguez had created. "Dr. Thompson," the mayor said, "I know this is not how you wanted to begin your tenure as chief, but the community needs to see your leadership right now. Are you ready to take on this challenge?" Dr. Thompson looked out her window at the city she would soon be serving and protecting. "Mr. Mayor, I've been ready for this my entire career. Let's get started." 3 days after the court hearing that shocked Riverside City, Dr. Angela Thompson walked through the doors of the police headquarters for the first time as the new chief. It was early Friday morning, and news vans were still parked outside the building. The whole country was watching to see how she would handle the crisis that Officer Rodriguez had created. Dr. Thompson wore her new uniform with pride. The gold stars on her collar represented 20 years of hard work, dedication, and service to her community. She had dreamed of this moment for years, but she never imagined it would come under such difficult circumstances. The lobby of the police station was buzzing with activity. Officers, detectives, and civilian employees were all talking quietly among themselves. Some looked curious, others seemed worried, and a few appeared skeptical about their new leader. Dr. Thompson knew she would have to earn their respect and trust through her actions, not just her rank. Sergeant Johnson, a veteran officer with 15 years of experience, approached her first. "Chief Thompson, welcome to Riverside PD. We're all looking forward to working with you." Dr. Thompson shook his hand firmly. "Thank you, Sergeant Johnson. I know these have been difficult days for everyone. My goal is to move forward together and build a department we can all be proud of." As she walked through the station, Dr. Thompson made eye contact with every person she met. She introduced herself to the desk clerks, the evidence technicians, and the janitors. She believed that every person in the building was important and deserved to be treated with respect. But there was one meeting she was dreading. Officer Rodriguez was waiting in Conference Room B, still officially suspended but required to meet with his new chief before any final decisions were made about his future. Dr. Thompson entered the conference room to find Rodriguez sitting at the table, looking defeated and nervous. He had lost weight in the past few days and looked like he had not been sleeping well. The confident, arrogant officer from the courtroom was gone, replaced by a broken man who finally understood the consequences of his actions. "Officer Rodriguez," Dr. Thompson said as she sat down across from him, "I think we need to have an honest conversation." Rodriguez looked up at her with tired, red eyes. "Chief Thompson, I want to apologize for what happened. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I never meant for things to go this far." Dr. Thompson studied his face carefully. She had dealt with many officers during her career who had made mistakes, and she could usually tell the difference between genuine remorse and fake apologies designed to avoid punishment. "Officer Rodriguez, do you understand why what you did was wrong?" she asked directly. Rodriguez fidgeted with his hands. I know I shouldn't have lied in court. That was wrong." "That's not what I asked," Dr. Thompson said firmly. "Do you understand why you stopped me in the first place? Do you understand why you treated me the way you did?" Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. He had spent the last few days thinking about this question, and he was finally beginning to understand the truth about himself. "You stopped me because I'm black," Dr. Thompson continued when he did not answer. "You saw a black woman driving an expensive car in a white neighborhood, and you decided I didn't belong there. You made assumptions about who I was based on the color of my skin." Rodriguez's shoulders slumped. "Yes," he whispered, "that's exactly what I did. And I've been doing it for years without even realizing it." This admission surprised Dr. Thompson. She had expected him to make excuses or deny his prejudice, but he seemed to be genuinely confronting his racism for the first time. "Rodriguez, I could fire you right now and everyone would support that decision. Your behavior was unacceptable, and your lies in court were criminal. But I want to ask you a question. Do you want to change?" Rodriguez looked up at her with surprise. He had expected to be fired immediately and possibly arrested. Yes, I do want to change, but I don't know how." Dr. Thompson leaned forward. "Change is hard work, and it takes time. It means admitting that everything you thought you knew about policing was wrong. It means examining your own prejudices and biases. Are you willing to do that work?" Rodriguez nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am. I'll do whatever it takes." "All right," Dr. Thompson said. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to remain suspended without pay for 60 days. During that time, you'll attend mandatory counseling sessions with a psychologist who specializes in racial bias. You'll also attend community meetings in the neighborhoods you've been patrolling, so you can hear directly from the people you've been serving." Rodriguez listened carefully to every word. "After 60 days, if your counselor believes you've made genuine progress, and if the community is willing to give you a second chance, you can return to duty. But you'll be on probation for 1 year, and you'll have a new partner who will be evaluating your every action." "What about the perjury charges?" Rodriguez asked nervously. "That's up to the district attorney, not me. But I'll be honest with you. Lying under oath is a serious crime, and you may face consequences for that regardless of what happens with your job." Rodriguez nodded, understanding the gravity of his situation. "Chief Thompson, why are you giving me this chance?" "After everything I did to you?" Dr. Thompson was quiet for a moment, thinking about her answer. "Because I believe people can change if they really want to, and because firing you doesn't solve the bigger problem. There are other officers in this department who think the same way you do. I'd rather try to reform you and use you as an example of how people can grow and improve." 2 weeks later, the changes in the Riverside Police Department were already visible. Dr. Thompson had implemented new training programs focused on unconscious bias and community policing. She had established a civilian review board to investigate complaints against officers. Most importantly, she had started regular meetings between police officers and community members. The first community meeting was held at the Riverside Community Center on a Tuesday evening. Over 200 people attended, including many residents from the neighborhoods that had been most affected by aggressive policing tactics. Dr. Thompson stood at the front of the room and addressed the crowd. "I know that many of you have lost trust in the police department. I know that some of you have been treated unfairly by officers who were supposed to protect and serve you. I'm here tonight to listen to your concerns and to work with you to rebuild that trust." One by one, community members stood up to share their stories. Mrs. Johnson, an elderly black woman, talked about being followed by police while walking in her own neighborhood. Marcus Williams, a young Latino man, described being stopped and searched for no reason while walking home from work. Dr. Thompson listened to every story with respect and attention. She took notes and asked questions. She did not make excuses or try to defend the department's past actions. Instead, she acknowledged the problems and committed to finding solutions. Officer Rodriguez, who was attending the meeting as part of his rehabilitation program, sat in the back of the room listening to the pain and frustration in people's voices. For the first time, he truly understood the impact of his actions on real families and communities. After the meeting, Rodriguez approached Mrs. Henderson, the woman who had recorded his traffic stop of Dr. Thompson. "Ma'am, I want to apologize for what you witnessed that day. My behavior was inexcusable." Mrs. Henderson studied his face carefully. "Young man, I've lived in this community for 70 years. I've seen a lot of good police officers and some bad ones. The question is, which one are you going to be?" 6 months later, the transformation of the Riverside Police Department was remarkable. Complaints against officers had dropped by 65%. Community satisfaction with police services had increased dramatically. Most importantly, the relationship between the police and the community was healing. Officer Rodriguez had successfully completed his rehabilitation program and returned to duty with a new partner, Officer Sarah Chen, a young Asian American woman who specialized in community policing. Together, they worked to build positive relationships with the people they served. Dr. Thompson had become a national figure in police reform. She spoke at conferences across the country, sharing the story of how one incident of racism had led to positive change for an entire community. She often talked about the importance of accountability, training, and community involvement in creating better policing. The video of Rodriguez's traffic stop was now used in police academies as a training tool, showing officers exactly what not to do. It served as a powerful reminder that every interaction between police and citizens matters, and that respect and dignity should be the foundation of all police work. 1 year after that fateful morning when Rodriguez pulled over Dr. Thompson, the city of Riverside had become a model for police reform. The department that had once been known for aggressive tactics and racial profiling was now praised for its community partnerships and fair treatment of all citizens. Dr. Thompson kept a framed copy of the dismissed traffic tickets on her office wall, not as a reminder of injustice, but as a symbol of how far they had all come. The incident that could have destroyed her faith in the system had instead become the catalyst for meaningful change. As she often told young officers during training,